Hi, just a reminder the trains aren't real. Thanks.
Okay, this is your state sponsored train podcast. I am your host, your ghost with the most.
Wait, when did we get sponsored?
When I said so. Uh, the state
Oh,
owes
okay.
me money. Anyways, I am your hostess with the mostest, David Marks. My pronouns are he and they. Tom,
Hey guys, it's Comrade Tom. Pronouns are he, him.
Kaylee,
Hi, I'm Kaylee. My pronouns are she and her. Or, I'm sorry, she, they.
Casey Jones,
Yo, I'm Casey Jones. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm I'm gonna crash the train.
my lovely wife, the love of my life, is here. Sky,
I'm Sky. She, they.
and I'd like to introduce my good buddy Will,
Hi, my name's Will. He, him.
and we got a man of a good working Penn Central employee here, Scooter.
Yeah, I'm Angry Scooter. He, they.
Hell yeah, brother. We were gonna do Chesapeake and Ohio, and then my cat Chesapeake went missing for a week, and then came back all fucked up. And Tom had a birthday, and I'm still about to have a baby, and well, Sky is. I'm not gonna do shit, but shit's been wild, and we kind of all forgot to make an episode, so we're just gonna talk about shit about trains that's like not good.
Yes. So guys, welcome to episode 6, or at least I'm pretty sure it's 6. David has confirmed with me that it's 6, but it is 6. Um,
Um,
Under
as
the
Justin
beast.
Rosniak always says, redundancy, redundancy,
yes.
redundancy.
Redundant.
We're gonna call this episode just railroad problems. We're gonna talk about everything that we can remember in the last 10 minutes that the railroads have done wrong. So
That's a lot
let's
of
launch
things.
right into this.
It's not a short list.
No, but we're gonna
Don't
be quick
hire
about this one.
bankers to the board. Episode over. See you guys later.
All
This
right.
is like that YouTube series, like a movie film sins or cinema sins, where they like just
Cinema
nitpick
sins.
every problem. That's us, but with the railroad community.
Yeah. So we're gonna start here. Steel strapped rail. This is the first rail that you guys are gonna see, or really American railroads are gonna see. And do you see how it looks like bullshit? It's because it is bullshit.
This is
It's
actually
roller
not
coaster
even the
track.
first rail, really. You have to to take the Rosniak approach. What is a railroad?
But a
It
road
is.
of rails.
Yeah, there we go.
In its
Hmm.
most basic form, it's grooves. It's like horses pulling carts through grooves. And at the time that even steel strap rail was coming around in the 1850s, like horses were a viable locomotive still. Like in multiple parts of the country, like horse and mule drawn railways were still around.
And you know what? I'm not giving this enough credit because I forgot that for a while we were actually just running on straight up logs.
That even happened into the 1800s in logging railroads.
Yeah.
And
At pole roads, right?
yep.
That's what
And
they
then
call them?
you also have to remember that like on the East Coast, like limestone or granite railroads were a thing. And they
Mhm.
did not
So
work at all. Like they were
so
not.
I guess let's reframe what I'm framing this as. This is the first tracks that we would probably formally recognize as railroad tracks.
That worked for
Yes.
anything other than a mule pulling a very wide cart.
Yes.
And so what this was, it was a timber, and these timbers, I mean, we're talking back in the day, these timbers would probably still be hewed by hand, which
And
is
they
a pain in the
absolutely
dick
would have
if you
been
don't know.
untreated as well. This is just I just cut this tree down at my local tree cutting union, local 346. It's a good
We
union
have to come
job.
up with those stickers.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
and
just
then
raw wood.
and then they have iron strapping that they're coming down and they're basically nailing it onto that wood. And it's extending the lifespan of this timber, um, but there's no real good way to check for fatigue. And so what will happen with these rails is that as heavy trains roll over them, and I mean when we say heavy trains in this period, we're not even touching like a 40-foot boxcar. I mean these things are still
My
light.
van is significantly larger than early little like open top rail cars for
Yeah.
sure.
But what will happen with this is that as you stress this iron and as it's passed over the wheels, it's going to want to pull up. And when you're going at such breakneck speeds as 20 miles an hour, when this pulls up at the joints where the iron ends, there's a very infamous thing that happens called a snakehead. And it's called a snakehead because it pops from the end of the thing and busts through the cabin door, and it greets you like a fucking snake ready there to bite you, and then it kills you.
Jesus.
Yeah.
That's
Some pretty
phenomenal.
gory
They ran
details.
20 miles an hour because they didn't know better. Like this is not a safe idea. I would not run 10 miles an hour down this on a kid's scooter. I'm not.
I railroaders
but-
back in the day just had more balls because, like, we've said the same thing. Like, how were they running 100-mile-an-hour trains on the Northeast Corridor with jointed rail?
Well, you got to
They were
remember
high on cocaine.
they didn't want women to get on trains because they thought that above 12 miles an hour a uterus would fly out of the body. So I don't
Which
really
is just
trust.
the most comical thing.
I don't trust the judgment of anybody from this time period on a goddamn thing.
Yeah.
True. But this is also a period where
However,
people
their
were disposable.
their opinions from 70 years earlier on everything in the Constitution is completely viable.
Fair.
So,
Sky,
Okay,
Sky said, you don't get to have an opinion on whether or not my uterus flies out. You don't have one.
at this point in her pregnancy, I would think that she is ready to have her uterus fly out.
Good Lord, any day.
It's true. It's true. I can't deny it.
All right, let's move on because we're doing this quick. And David, what would you call this contraption?
Ugly piece of shit.
Or a
Train with a
use
chaotic
the
aura.
buzzword. God damn it! It's like pulling teeth. This would be what David referred to in the first podcast as a forbidden tea kettle.
Oh, that's what it is. Hey, I forgot.
Oh, are you kidding me?
Hey, it happens, bud. Oh, I just got some kind of blue screen warning for
Yeah,
a
the
second.
fucking
It went away.
boiler
Hold on.
tubes.
We still recording?
Yeah, I got
okay.
that too.
All right, we're good.
Zach?
That was Tom.
Mhm.
Crisis averted.
Yeah, this fucking thing. Tom Thumb had like boiler tubes made out of goddamn musket barrels. Like that's how fucking thrown together this thing was.
That disgusts me.
Mhm.
Wait, is that a true statement?
That, to my knowledge, I remember reading that in a book about the Tom Thumb, or like early Pioneer locomotives. I could probably pull it off my shelf and spend 20 minutes trying to find it, but I'm fairly certain that's true.
Okay, well, thinking
Dude,
about the
that's fucking
metallurgy at the time, even if it isn't literally just a bent musket barrel, it's about the same goddamn thing. I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably
We're not
made in the
dealing with,
same
like-
factory.
Actually, I would think that would probably be one of the most sound building materials because I mean it's already meant to
Yeah,
withstand
it's
pressure.
gun steel. Gun steel is about the hardest thing. But I mean, also think about how often muskets would fucking explode.
Yeah, in that time period.
Well,
Yeah.
we can have a conversation about that as a Revolutionary War reenactor another day,
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
about why that usually happened.
That's usually because you put too much fucking powder in it. But
No, not even that. It's that. So usually, what people were used to is like aim wasn't a thing back in the day. We think of ready, aim, fire. That wasn't a thing. It was ready, level, fire because there's no rear sight on a musket. It's like shooting a shotgun. Most people didn't shoot that well, especially trained soldiers. Trained soldiers weren't given live rounds. They were given like 12 live rounds a year. They were given blanks because the emphasis was on how load you can load and fire. Well, you don't need lead to practice loading and firing. You just need powder. So a lot of times those guys would just close their eyes and pull the trigger. Well, if you had a flash in the pan, you didn't know any different from the gun going off because black powder doesn't have a ton of recoil. So those guys would pack 3 or 4 full loads of powder and ball, powder and ball, powder and ball, and then the touch hole would finally like open up, and then 4 loads go off at the same time. The balls are all double stacked, and it's a mess.
Oh.
that's
Ouch.
that's a whole thing.
Also, I
Yeah.
can't find a cited source on this, but yes, it was musket barrels inside the forbidden tea kettle.
That's badass.
Dude, that's
Incredible.
metal. I want a
I-
model of this now.
Oh,
I'd
I
like
mean,
to know what pressures were, because it couldn't have been much back
Sorry?
then. What pressures was the thing running at? Because it couldn't have been a bomb.
Probably
It's
like 20 psi.
Yeah.
Yeah, I recall it only being double digits. I think at highest it was 75, but I think that may be the replica that I'm
So a
thinking.
Yeah, but
modern
who even
train has higher air pressure in the air brakes. That's
I
crazy to think about.
I don't give two shits how much pressure it is. Y'all ever held your hand over a tea kettle when it's steaming out? That shit burns, motherfucker. I don't care if it's 2 pounds. That shit.
Mhm.
I now want to build
Well,
one of
that's
these
why
in
we use the
7.
musket barrels.
I want to build one of these in 7.25 now, just for the fuck of it.
Mhm. Yeah.
You could
Oh,
get,
Use
oh
nine-
man,
just
you could probably harvest parts off those things that like every really poor school, like my fucking like 6th grade middle school had, where it's like those old steam models from the 50s. That's like a
Yeah,
stationary steam. You know what I'm talking about? Like you
let's
could,
goes.
yeah, you could
Yeah.
literally just take parts off that, put it on like a flat car, and you're good. Like you got it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but to make it realistic, you gotta use like 1911 barrels
I'm not
Yes.
doing that
inside
to a
the boiler.
1911, but thank you for playing.
Have to scrap a bunch of
Knockoffs,
old.
knockoffs. It couldn't have been great in there.
We have
I
to
will
scrap a
use.
whole bunch of old rifles and build our own authentic Tom Thumb replica.
I want some. So IMA brought back some brown Besses from Nepal.
Yeah, well, I'm not opposed to it. Fuck it. Yeah, let's scrap as many rare historical items as we possibly can to make a replica Tom Thumb and run it down the Northeast Corridor on a speed test.
Stored and running on the main line.
We are now sponsored by the state of Alabama because I said so. So they're gonna pay for it. Start.
There you go.
You can just go and just find some historical items. Just bring them to my house. Don't ask questions. You can just do it. The state will pay for it. It's okay. Signing off on that. State of Alabama.
Even
Go take a cannon from like a state park near your house and bring it to me.
high NSA guy.
Jason Fifi's been on this podcast. We're already on so many watch lists. And I've been on the Great Satan, so I was on him before y'all were.
Hmm.
Oh, we lost the stream, Tom.
Hey, I'm back. My laptop just randomly decided to die.
Oh, that's good. You want to turn your stream back on?
I do. So, heavy emphasis on the chaotic auras today.
Yep.
Okay, going back to where we were.
Put all that work
Okay,
into
so
making the
now with
audio
now with
hopefully
my
sound
fuck up, I
good.
think we can move on.
That's what that blue screen was for. It was your plug in your laptop, wasn't it?
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and then I plugged it in. I thought we were fine, and then the power cord was unplugged from the transformer, and I was like, "Why the fuck did it die?" And then I'm like checking all the connections, I'm like, "Oh, because I'm an idiot."
Yep, that'll do it. Okay, moving on.
So here's David, you were talking about charters.
Oh God, I wish I knew more about them. But yeah, basically in the old days, like the state or the local government had to basically be like, all right, build this railroad, and you know I think to this day, aren't there still class ones that are operating on like 1830 something charters? I know like the Western and Atlantic, the CSX line that runs through like Dalton, Georgia, is still like state owned. I know like the NS Rat Hole, the CNOTP, is owned by like the city of Cincinnati or some shit. Like,
Yeah.
That's really cool,
Yep.
actually. So I found this graphic and I thought this was really interesting. And it shows you all those railroads that were built like before 1850, and you can just see that. I mean, there's a lot of critical links that are missing. And then the Civil War comes around, and then it's not like the Union's better at building railroads or anything, but like the Union's better at building railroads.
yeah, so
Yeah,
technology
and better
has
at posting
advanced
them.
massively railroad wise between 1850 and 1860, mostly just in like the amount of it's not so much that the technology has advanced, more so that the skills are being developed and the understanding. This is still a very primitive thing, but you know, especially by the time you get to the Civil War and it becomes clear to the government what an important link this is, it starts getting real easy to build railroads. Um,
And then, yeah. And I
that,
mean, let's just talk about this here. this massive spider web. This is probably the reason why the Union wins the Civil War.
Yeah,
Yeah, if I may,
that and that all,
sorry, if I may.
all you fascist bound to
Okay, we're
lose.
gonna do that. Yes, fascists, fuck fascists. But also, like, South was more set up for, like, going east to west, moving cotton around to plantations and ports and shit. They didn't have a lot of need to go north and south, unlike the Union, who just kind of did whatever the fuck they wanted. And so that was also another thing, was that they had to go these long distances just to go north to move their troops and equipment, and other supplies.
And that's why you see major Civil War battles around this stuff. Like, isn't Manassas like... Manassas at a railroad junction. Atlanta, correct me if I'm wrong, David, that's right there?
Yep.
The ATL?
Sure.
Yep, that's...
Yeah, why not?
You can see that's a hub of 2 different tracks. That's why
Listen,
Sherman
I live
inadvertently
by
burns
I
it
live
down.
by a very simple rule. Anything north of Manchester, Georgia, is Atlanta. If you live by that rule, you're always at home, baby.
So, yeah, so, just expanding my charters is one of the things. Holds up the railroads a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
Like, didn't the South have... I'm sorry, and also, like, the North had standardized to 4'8" and a half by this time, I think.
mostly,
The
and
South
the South was
still
using broad
had-
gauge.
Yeah, they were using,
Yeah.
like, 5 foot, 6 foot, 4'8" and a half. They were using, like, a variety of gauges, to my understanding, which also, again, hindered the movement of supplies because they had to transload everything.
Having a change of gauge meant commerce for your town. You had to unload and load trains there no matter what, which means you always
Yep.
had commerce in your town.
Mm-hmm.
It's like capitalism breeds ineffective transportation.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
I know, going back to, like, what Justin Rosniak says sometimes, weren't, like, public railroads a thing? I haven't done any research at all on this.
I don't know how anyone expected it to work. But yeah, the idea was that anybody could buy a locomotive, and could just, run a train, like, for lack of a better word. Like, you could just be like, I'm just gonna, I don't know what they expected you to do with it. I don't know if they're like, to drive yourself around, or I'm gonna compete with Mr. Milton down the street on who can haul
God
this
forbid
boxcar of
we
cotton.
ever get a time machine.
Oh, I'm gonna go
Like,
back
if
and
we-
just watch chaos unfold from, like, 600 or 800 feet away.
Well, like, if we're the first people to get a time machine, the first thing that's going to happen is, like, we're just going to go railfan everything that we ever wanted to railfan.
Of course.
And then we're going to just get piles of gold from somewhere. I don't know where, but we're going to get it. And then we're going to go to some locomotive manufacturer in, like, 1860 and have them try and build the 1860 equivalent of, like, an Allegheny.
Yeah.
And just out-haul everyone everywhere.
So you mean the El Governor?
Oh no.
That 210 that they built in, like, 1880 or some shit?
Yeah, the cursed
It didn't
210. Yep.
Hilariously overbuilt. Couldn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of overbuilt, how about the fucking Erie triplex?
Odd.
Oh, no.
That's another railroading mistake.
That's a fucking cryptid, even if it's in full focus.
Are you talking about the Erie or the triplex?
Man, I wish I knew more about the Erie, because everything I hear about it is bad.
And Erie actually did some cool shit. They had a locomotive that
Maybe-
they had their employees design, and then they actually built it. So, for communism, workers' power. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
we can't have that in this country.
Didn't several railroads have in-house designs though?
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
lots of people.
in this, they literally went to their engineers and said, okay, and I mean operating engineers, not mechanical engineers. And they said, okay, boys, design the perfect locomotive. And they did, and it ran for many years.
That's pretty
Choo-choo,
interesting.
not pencil and slide rule engineer. Gotcha.
Oh yeah, we got to talk about how trains were held together, because this is a problem.
Real
Do you
quick
guys
before
like
move
your
on,
fingers? Do you
I-
like
I-
your fingers being attached to your hands?
Absolutely not.
If so, this is the coupler for you.
I mean, you got to
Hell yeah.
think even into the early 1900s, no railroader lived his whole career and kept all his fingers and toes.
If
And
you
they
want,
were you were assigned the job based on how many you had left.
Yeah, in
Mhm.
these days, yeah, how you'd work in like ground service on the. This is the day before unified hand signals, before anything even resembling like an operating rules guide. This is the time
Before
before.
you again.
I mean, a lot of this Lincoln Penn stuff's going on. Like this car here in the picture, I'm assuming is narrow gauge, but it has air.
It is.
Most of these cars, I mean, especially in the early 1800s, you don't have air brakes. You don't have really brakes at all, to be honest. You got somebody running along the roof to crank a handbrake.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, life expectancy on the Transcon was what, 3 weeks when it was built?
Dear
Holy
God.
shit! What?
Yeah, I don't remember where I read that, but like a rooftop brakeman's life expectancy was 3 to 5 weeks, I think,
Oh my
on
god.
the western
And
end.
then, so I didn't even think about to add that stuff, but like, yeah, you used to have to walk along the top of the train cars, tighten handbrakes by hand going down a grade. Oh, and if you were in a region with tunnels or low clearance, you had to wait for these things called telltales, because you were expected to do this in the fucking night. So,
Yeah, you'd basically like go through a wind chime at speed and be like, "Up, time to get down."
time to lay flat.
Yep. And then just in switching operations, the craziest part to me is in switching operations, you have a guy standing up with the pin ready to drop it, and then a guy
Oh.
behind him signaling in, and then another guy actually telling the engineer what to do, all at speed. So like guy with pin is always the low man.
Yeah.
Because nobody else has their fingers, is my understanding.
Yep.
Yes. And then once you become someone with just no fingers, you get to work in interlocking because you can press the handles together and then move it still.
Jesus.
Yeah, railroading today is still pretty grim, but like not as grim as it used to be.
Yeah, with
Well-
Brandon Warnick dying last year, that was like one of the final things for me to be like, yeah, I need to get the fuck out of this industry.
Did we lose you, David?
No, can you hear me?
We lost David. SF in the chat, y'all.
That's not good. He's the one recording.
Yeah.
Hello?
Well,
It is truly a chaotic night.
It is.
I think we lost the internet.